Let me tell you, my friends, there are a lot of tailors out there, but there aren't many doing it right. So in this video, I'm going to show you the basic tools you need to get into this industry and do tailoring right. Plus, I'll show you some of the tools that will help you set yourself apart from those other so-called tailors. My name is Louis Jeremita. I am the founder of Primo Tailoring and Aspiring Gent, and today we are going to be talking about basic tailoring tools. Hand tools. We're going to start here because this will be the most in-depth part of the talk, as well as these tools are going to be used in and out and probably going to be the workhorse. Now, we're not going to dive in too deep on each section. We're just going to do a run through so you know what you'll need, and then we're working on another series to break down each one of these sections into even more in-depth tutorials, so keep an eye out for those. So let's talk about our scissors. Now, I do have an in-depth video on that you can check out right now. I will link it in this video. But for those who just want to get a brief rundown, you are looking for your fabric scissors, which should only be used on fabric, pinking scissors to clean up raw edges and stop them from fraying, nips, which are going to help you clean up your jobs. I'm going to add seam rippers in here because they're sharp, I guess. But these are, as the name implies, going to help you rip seams open for jobs or redoing or taking apart mistakes or whatever have you. I personally like to use razor blades, but if you're just getting started, a seam ripper is going to be the best way for you to get started. You can use the small or large ones. It all depends on your preference and your hand size, but these are going to help you get started with your good starting scissors. Needles. A tailor without a needle is hardly a tailor at all. Now, I like to use two types of needles. These are the size 4s and size 6s. You're going to have one that is going to be a much smaller needle and then another one that's going to be much larger. Larger needles are for heavy duty work. This is going to be pushing through denim. This is going to be putting on buttons. And the other one's going to be finer work for collars, tacking linings, all of that great stuff. You want a nice portion of these because they're not going to be very expensive, but they do happen to go missing quite often in the tailor shop. So a quick little add-on to my list that I didn't put in there before is a thimble. This thing is super important in your arsenal of tailoring tools. Make sure you get an open face one. I have other content talking about the way to use a thimble and the proper way to size it, but for right now, just know that you need a thimble. Now, our measuring implements. You really only need these core 3. You can get all the kind of see-through curved rollers that you want that help with quilting and all that stuff, but I use mainly a yardstick, an 1.5" cuff ruler, it's 12-inch ruler, and a cloth tape. These are going to be the bulk of what we need. The yardstick, obviously, going to be nice, long, straight marks. If you're needing something for hems or sleeves or little measurements, but you need it to be straight, use that 12-inch cuff ruler. And also for body measurements or other non-straight measurements, you need a nice cloth tape. None of these need to be very expensive as long as they're actually constructed straight and there's no curves or bends to them. And all the measurements do line up in their correct order. You will be fine. You don't need to spend a lot of money on this area. Marking tools. You are going to have two main forms, pins or chalk, both great for different scenarios, but also very much needed. Chalk, I like to use the Super Glide wax chalk. This is going to be easy for removal of garments, and some that are actually chalk or other weird materials that create it don't always go away when you steam them, which will leave permanent marks on your garments, which are not good, especially if you're doing it for others. But this Super Glide has been very great since the beginning of my tailoring, and I would recommend it to anybody. Pins, you can use the big glass head pins. I like these smaller straight pins. They're easier for running through the machine. However, you don't want to run it through your machine. But if you do, these ones are great for that, and also they're so cheap. If you want to try out a different brand of chalk, let me know, or if you already use a different brand of chalk, let me know in the comments what that is. I like the Super Glide, but try different ones at your own risk. Moving on to the next section of our talk, machines. Now you really only need one, so this is going to be a quick section. I used a home sewing machine, tabletop home sewing machine for the longest time. You don't need anything like these industrial guys behind me. The home ones are going to do about 99% of the work that these do for half the cost. I used for the longest time and still use the Genome 2222, and that thing has been a workhorse. I've dropped it, I've left it out, I've done so many different things to it, and it's still working like a charm, have no complaints, and it hits all the key features that I'm going to list to you to look for in your next machine. Another great option is the Singer Heavy Duty series. They have different styles and numbers, so find the one that's the best price range for you and fits the features that you need. But I have some people, and I've used those machines myself, that really love them, and they're a great machine. But let's get into the features you should have in either your home or your conglomeration of industrial machines. One, you should be able to have a zigzag stitch. This is the stitch that goes all the way up the garment, gonna finish off your raw edges, going to pretty much take the place of a serger for a home sewing machine. Very vital. It also is great for darning holes or covering up patches and stuff like that. Twin needle attachment. This isn't 100% necessary, but if you do want one of the tools that are gonna set you apart from the others, get one that can have a twin needle. Anytime you see any sports stretchy fabrics that are hemmed and you have that two perfect parallel lines, done on a twin needle. The home ones are a little different than the industrial ones, but still serve the purpose of a perfectly even parallel line around a hem, and it does a zigzag on the bottom so that it's a nice stretchy stitch as well, so nothing's gonna pop when you're using your stretchy materials. Blind hem features. I will say I do not use this a lot, and I never really did. I always preferred to do it by hand, mostly because I was not the best at home sewing blind hems on those machines. But if you can figure it out and you're pretty good at it, having that feature will save you a lot of time than going around a dress pant doing it by hand. Lastly, a buttonhole function. Again, not make or break it for the machine, but again, setting you apart if you have the ability to throw a buttonhole into a garment for somebody, or if you want to make something from scratch, having this feature is so much better than not having it. So keep that in mind when you're looking for your machines to have a buttonhole, automatic buttonhole feature. And that's about it. Everything else on a machine, when you see all those stitch lengths, really don't matter unless you're doing some kind of quilting or really exotic work on your machine. For tailoring, these are gonna be the main features you need. Obviously straight stitching, bob and winder, but those are pretty standard for all your machines. So keep those in mind when shopping for your next one. Let's talk about pressing, guys. Now, a good iron is worth its weight in gold, but how do you know what a good iron is? So I put, again, these three features that you wanna look for when determining what iron to buy. First one is going to be steam. A healthy amount of steam is gonna go a long way when trying to shape your garments. Doing collar works or sleeves or anything like that, it helps to have a healthy amount of steam. And to get a healthy amount of steam, you need a large water supply area to put the water in. If you have like a pea-size amount of water that can fit in your iron, you're gonna be refilling that every like 2 minutes, and trust me, you're gonna hate it. The iron that I have actually has an external water supply, which is great because I fill it once a week and it doesn't go out and it doesn't ruin the iron sitting in it. This runs you about $100 on Amazon, but if you're looking for, again, that thing to set you apart, get an iron like this. Next is a heat guard. Again, the iron I have has this. This is great for when you're ironing a piece of clothing and you don't want it to burn your fabric. A normal metal plate on a home iron can easily burn garments, and I have done it many a times on home irons. But having something like a heat guard is fantastic because some seams really need some dedicated solid pressure and heat for an area for it to lay flat enough and to have a nice fold to it. And having a heat guard allows you to keep the iron there longer than you normally would without risking a burn. The settings on your iron. You want to be able to have a large array of settings, from fine fabrics to heavy fabrics to cottons to linens. All of that is going to be useful on your machine. So get something that has multiple settings, not just like one or two or none. The more settings you have, the more versatility your iron has, and the more professional the more professional your work will look. Other things, some honorable mentions for the iron is an ironing board for sure. You can sometimes get away with this with just a towel on your table, pressing hams, pressing sleeves, and a buck. The sleeves and buck aren't as essential as an ironing board. I would recommend get one if you don't have one. But to level up your sewing, getting a pressing ham, pad, or buck is going to be great because, again, you can add those curves, you can add those nuances to the fabric through steaming that you normally can't do on a flat surface or just an ironing board. Thank you for sticking it out to the end of this video. If you found it valuable, we really appreciate a like, share, or comment telling us so. This really helps boost it out to other people to be able to see our content. And if you are a little bit still confused or have more in-depth questions, reach out in the comments or any of my other various social media platforms you can find down below. Additionally, being able to subscribe and getting these tailoring videos so you don't miss a single one would be great. And if you feel like doing it, hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, See you later and have a fun time tailoring.